Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Literary License Podcast 2-for-1 episodes, where we look at 2 films and discuss the themes of the month, with your special co-host, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shago, coming at you from the UK and USA.
Sit down.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast, and today we're discussing Westworld, the 1973 film classic, and Shawshank Redemption, 1994. This is part of You're My Obsession Month, and the reason why Westworld is part of My Obsession Month is about a robot obsessed with killing a tourist, and Shawshank Redemption about a man who's obsessed of escaping from prison. So, before we get started, let's find out who's with us. So today we have Vicky Ray. Hello, Vicky.
Hi, as per usual.
And myself. Unfortunately, John's not here. He's dealing with some medical issues, and he should be with us next month. So, Vicky, as we always do, what is your thorn and rose of the week?
Without offending our audience, I would say, well, my rose this week is... I'm going to the Virgin Islands. My daughter is taking me, so I'm really excited about that. Who wouldn't be excited about that? So we're going for a little bit and go snorkeling and enjoy some sand and blue water. My thorn, however, hit me this morning because I couldn't think of anything that was really pissing me off until I was going through the news, and then I saw that Harrison Ford is trash-talking the United States. I thought that all but him, he would not succumb to the tyranny of Hollywood. But apparently he's starting to trash the United States too. And I don't understand why these people trash the country because they've done so well living here. Bottom line.
Well, it's like all those celebrities that said that they were going to leave if Trump got voted in, and they're still bloody there. So go figure.
Well, another rose could be Joy Behar on The View. She had a total meltdown this week because of the acquittal. Total meltdown. Loving it.
I don't understand how that show keeps going, but anyway.
Ratings.
Yeah, somebody's watching it. I don't know anyone who is, but somebody's watching it.
I often wonder if they're that mean and whatever because they do get ratings that way, and if they actually feel that way because, I mean, it's all about the ratings, right?
Yeah, but the funny thing about it is that the people who are home are able to watch that I don't know if the ratings are that high. From what I understand, the ratings have been dipping lower and lower. But
I don't usually watch it.
But it is cheap television. I mean, it's not like they're going after like mega stars to put them on the show or anything like that. It's just 4 menopausal women bitching about politics.
I'm just bummed that they don't put on more Springer. I don't know if they discontinued it. It's all reruns. But I really loved Springer. I know it's dysfunctional, but it always made me feel better about my life knowing that there was people out there far more fucked up than me.
Well, I always used to watch Jerry Springer when I got homesick. But, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, if I'm ever home watching daytime television, I tend to be more inclined to watch, great big omnibuses of Judge Judy.
I love Judge Judy.
Yeah, I'll deal with that. She's my guilty pleasure, so I'll stick by her if I'm for daytime television.
What about your rose and thorn of the week?
My thorn of the week has to be Americans piping in about Brexit because I don't think they understand
no
any
shit.
of it. Honestly, I don't have a strong view,
leaning
pro or against.
right.
I'm against because of Isaac being Spanish living here, but I mean, he just sorted out his green card, which is done by an app, and he got it within 2 weeks. So it was like no big deal. So
Right.
So
that's going to be harder now.
It just means you have to go through immigration, but I have an American passport, so I have to go through immigration no matter what port I go
We all
through.
do, because every time I flew, we had to stop in Ireland, and I had to wait and go through lines and wait to immigration because it was the first point of entry into Europe.
Well, the good thing about Trump is he organized this with the UK border control, that Americans no longer have to go through immigration. All they have to do is put their passport into the machine now, and you just go right straight through now.
Well, we'll see come June how that works out.
Yeah, it works well for me. I mean, for ages, Isaac used to sit there and have to wait like hours for me to go through the line.
It's terrible. I hated it. We're being in line for literally hours in Dublin just to get out of fucking Ireland. But you probably feel the same way I do about Canada piping in over here all the time, bitching about the United States. It's like, shut up, you don't live here.
Yeah,
love all our Canadian viewers and listeners. Everybody needs to get along.
I mean, the thing about the Brexit, it is Brexit that has gone through on the 31st of January and will be totally out by the 31st of December. And whether you're pro or against, I guess the thing is I can see both sides. And I know both sides, and I understand why people voted. And I don't like Americans sitting there saying it was a racist vote, because
I know that's stupid.
Well, Europeans are bloody white. They're whiter than the bloody queen.
Right.
I mean, they're whiter than any middle America is ever going to be. So,
is it going to be harder for people to get in as for asylum and all that, or?
God knows what they're. I don't think we're going to really know what it really means until probably within 5 to 6 years in the midst of it.
It's probably like Obamacare. You don't know what's in it until they pass it and put it into play, and then it becomes a disaster. So.
The thing is, if it ends up being a great thing, fantastic. If it ends up being a bad thing, it's fine, because you just have to deal with it. That's
so I need to leave all my euros at home, huh?
Well, unless you plan on going over to Europe, you might need your euros. So
you're considered you're gone.
Yeah, we've left, so we'll see how that goes.
A lot of people want to follow, so we'll see how that all works out.
Well, the good thing, at least, it's not headlining the news anymore. But yeah, it's just Americans posting stuff on social media and putting the year.
And they have no clue what's going on over there.
Well, it's like, it's not going to really affect you unless you're coming over here, and you're going to go through border control no matter where you go.
The Jonathan Pye. I sent you the Jonathan Pye. He's my new hero. I totally love him. I saw that last night. I got to send this to Keith. You got to get a kick out of him. He's just so goddamn funny. Oh my God. I just didn't know where he's been all my life until recently.
And my rose of the week is that we've been shortlisted for a Rondo Award. So
that too.
Yes.
I was that's great.
If people want to vote for us, I will put all the information into our show notes, and they'll be with this podcast, and they'll be with our newsletter. But yeah, so we've been shortlisted.
Pick me.
So yeah, that's quite surprising, actually. So thank you for all those who have nominated us. Apparently, we had quite a few nominations to shortlist us. So
very cool.
And that brings us to Westworld. Westworld is an American science fiction thriller media franchise which began in 1973 with the release of the film Westworld, which was written and directed by Michael Crichton. If Michael Crichton rings a bell, you can nod your head to Jurassic Park. That's one of his biggest. Westworld was the first thing he's ever written. It also gave him his novel writing career, which I used to be a big Michael Crichton.
I like his books too. It gave him his first directing chance too, didn't it?
Precisely, yeah. So if this film didn't take off the way it did, we would never have Jurassic Park. We would have the other books that he wrote, like Prey and Airframe. Yeah. And so on and
he's
so
quite
forth.
He's quite a brilliant author. I like him. I like
the way he mixes believable science. Even though it is science fiction, but there is a believability to it. And even
there's just a fraction. There's a fraction of believability. Well, every story, there's that one possibility. Someone might hit on that one thing. You never know. Yeah.
So he's quite a bright man. And it's sad that he died at such a young age. But we do have his films and books still to keep him very much alive.
And
Westworld is a film that depicts a technical and technologically advanced Western-themed amusement park populated by androids that malfunction and begin killing their human visitors. It was followed by a sequel film called Futureworld in 1976. I have seen Futureworld. The only thing I can tell you about it is that, unfortunately, when you deal with any kind of film, whether it's today or in the past, and they're dealing with anything about the future, it ages it very, very quickly. So that's probably one of the problems with Futureworld, though it has a fantastic cast.
No, it does.
In 1980, there was a short-lived television series called Beyond Westworld, a television series now called Westworld, which is produced by HBO and based on the original film, and debuted on October 2nd, 2016. A second season also aired in April 2018, and a third season's on its way this year.
I know. I just read that last night. It's like, yes, they got a third season, because I totally binge-watched the first 2 seasons. Excellent series. I loved it.
There is a computer game, a first-person shooter based on the film titled Westworld 2000, which was released in 1996. We discussed Westworld. We're going to cut to the trailer. We'll be back after the trailer.
We have you on grid 5. Notify ground.
We will soon be landing at the ultimate resort, where you can live out your every fantasy. Each resort is maintained by reliable computer technology and people by lifelike robot men and women. Desire ends in satisfaction, and all in a controlled environment.
I love this place. There's a lot to do here. The guns they give you are real guns? This place is really fun. It's last day in the resort. Let's make it a Lulu. You'll have to switch on.
Fellas new in town?
Maybe. Okay. Losing a little tolerance. Bring me up.
They're not responding.
Should we cut the main power grid, sir? It'll kill the life.
Shut it all down. Shut it all down. Shut down. Shut down immediately.
We have no control over the robots at all. Raw. Oh my God.
Everything's broken down. The machines have gone crazy. There's one chasing me now. What can I do? There's nothing you can do.
Hello, welcome back. We're discussing Westworld, the 1973 film written and directed by Michael Crichton. So, Vicky, what are your thoughts on Westworld?
Well, I hadn't seen it in years. I'm talking 30, 40 years. I think I sat down and watched some of it with Mom. I thought she thought that the Roman world might have been a little too risque for me back then, so I didn't get to watch it all.
Well,
I would have loved to have seen more of Roman world in the Westworld movie.
It was Roman Orgy World, wasn't it?
Roman Orgy World, the vomitorium and everything else. But I actually enjoyed it because, I mean, it's definitely, that was the first time they tried to digitize something, I believe. I can't remember what the procedure is, but they tried to digitize, like, where, Yul Brynner as the android killer robot there that goes amok, what he's seeing. And I think that was the first time that they did that. But I love Yul Brynner. I was kind of saddened to hear that he actually had to take the part, though, for $75,000, because at that time he needed the money. But also what I did notice about Yul Brynner's character, and I think I talked to you about it a little while ago, but what I noticed, it seemed like James Cameron might have taken something from this to make his Terminator series, because Yul Brynner was the robot that wouldn't stop coming. And that's all it kept reminding me of was the Terminator. So I don't know if they got a nod from this or
I most certainly think that Westworld does. James Cameron's Terminator is an ode to Westworld.
It seems
just set in
like
today's world.
It just the way he kept coming back, because Yul Brynner is like the Terminator, even though he's just a robot whose schematics ran amok. But I loved it. I didn't get up. I didn't move. I watched the whole thing straight through. So, if I'm interested in it, I really liked it, and I enjoyed it. I actually watched it twice because I enjoyed it so much.
Well, for a film that Yul Brynner just did it for the paycheck, it's amazing that now he has two iconic roles to his belt because of this film. First, he was always going to be known as the King and I. Always going to be the King and I, until Westworld came around, and all of a sudden now he's got this other iconic role.
Well, he's always going to be Ramses in the 10 Commandments. So let it be written. So let it be done. Every time I think of Yul Brynner, I think of that.
Well, it's probably because he had a bald head and he didn't have to shave his head.
He was kind of hot looking though in his, King Tut apparel. Well, he was a good looking man.
He's very virile, wasn't he? He was a virile type of man. So.
He was a man's man.
I have to sit there and say that the film does keep up quite well. I mean, it doesn't look as dated as you think it does. And I think that has to do with setting it in the Old West.
They did they did shorten a lot of the scenes because they thought they were getting just too bombastically long. And they thought that people, like with the hovercraft, I guess a lot of that stuff was, that and the chase scene through the desert, they cut that too. But I mean, they did just enough. I mean, I wanted to see more. That's why I was all excited when the series came out. I started watching that. But
fans in love with the series Westworld, the HBO 2016 series. If you do look in the scene of one of the episodes, you'll see that the Yul Brynner standing in the background.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, watch it again. It's part where the Hispanic, or he might be an African American actor, can't remember his name.
Right, I know you're talking
but basically, he's doing some research on a computer, and he's gone down to the bottom lab, and he's clicking in to find out exactly what's going on. And behind him is Yul Brynner standing on the back wall.
I didn't notice that. No way. Now I got to figure out which. I'll have to go Google the episode, and then I'll have to go watch it because I totally missed that.
Yeah, so there is a lot of nods to this film, Westworld.
Good.
I thought what was quite interesting. Another thought thing, because I haven't seen this film for years, but now rewatching it, and you forget how much Josh Brolin looks like his dad, James Brolin.
I know. Isn't that just uncanny or what?
I know.
And he was such a goofball in this movie, though. He was a big goofy, wasn't he? Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, but he was very good looking, though. He's one guy. I mean, you look at him today, and he's aged extremely well. And you look at him today, and you think, God, Barbara Streisand, you don't deserve it, but you're a lucky woman.
Yeah. Babs has got it going on. No, he's a good-looking man. He still is. His son's good-looking. I love him.
Yeah.
I just can't believe that's the same person that was in the Goonies, was it not? Who's the Brolin that was in the Goonies?
Josh Brolin was the young boy in the Goonies. Yeah. James Brolin, before this, he was mainly known for a TV. Was it Marcus Welby, or was it Medical Center? So Marcus Welby, MD. That's what he's.
I think it's Marcus Welby.
Yeah, so he was a TV actor.
If my brain is going back 40 years thinking on it, I think it's Marcus Welby, because my parents used to watch it. Oh my God!
But he was quite but it was another quite odd thing about this film. Also, it's James Brolin in kind of comedy-esque, kind of the best friend who's kind of seen it, done it all, and then you got Richard Benjamin who's doing the serious role, and before this, Richard Benjamin used to play all these comedy roles.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you probably remember from Saturday the 14th, because he's married to Paula Prentice, who was in Stepford Wives.
I was kind of actually surprised to see him in this role, because it was just a totally different role for him. And in all of his interviews, he was really enjoyed the role because he liked doing it. He figured this is the only time he could get into a Western, is if he did this. And he said it was a lot of fun. The cowboys running across the desert on a horse with no name and everything else. But he really enjoyed the role quite a bit. And you can tell he enjoyed himself in the movie.
I had to sit there and say, I like the way that And this is what I quite miss about 70s films. 70s films take a while before the action hits, but they kind of lull you into it, and then it makes you totally realize everything that you're seeing. And then when the turn happens in the plot, it's like you're ready for it. And I quite like that whole build up, like them arriving, them, get to know
to Delos. Boy, what a vacation. Or what was the saying? I can't remember now. I'm going to look. It's going to drive me nuts. Delos, I know that was the name of the company.
Yeah, which is also the company in the TV series as well, which is quite interesting. Yep. But I did actually like the way that they kind of, they don't just throw you into, here we are in the set of the West. You got them arriving. You got everyone color coded, and then they get off and they go into their separate cars. And then you also have the way that they mixed. That you don't know who's human and who's
except machine. For the hands, and I couldn't figure out because I was looking at the hands and I couldn't. There must have been something they shown in a scene that the hands were different on the robots.
Well, they did do a close up of the man when they were checking into the hotel, and he gives the guy the tip, and they show his hands, and there's no fingerprints.
Oh, okay.
There's no fingerprints, so that's how you tell. And I do like what I also liked about Westworld also is that. I'm not a fan of Westerns. I never was. The 50s, the 40s, 50s, 60s were a big time for
I love
Westerns.
John Wayne movies.
A lot of people like them. I just never really got into them. But because my family was into them and going home with Isaac's mom twice a year, Westerns
she liked them?
Oh, they play on afternoon TV shows in Spanish all the time.
That's great.
Western films. So they're always playing. But you do see these actors, like these, group of actors that are always playing in the backgrounds. And I like that you see all these same kind of actors in the background. There's the craggly old man with the mustache, not really shaven look, and you kind of recognize I don't know
sitting on the rocking
people are, but you recognize their faces.
Right,
they're always in Westerns.
Yeah, that was smart
like
of them too, actually.
Yeah. The only thing I do say that I probably would have liked to see more of, I guess, would be Medieval World.
Yeah, they didn't show enough of the other two worlds. I think they would have made it a much longer movie had they did that. So I think they were just trying to incorporate it to the best they could in the condensation of just keeping it to the West. But it was really cool that they had Medieval World and Western World. And what else was really kind of intriguing was that Yul Brynner looked like he was for I guess it was the gunslinger appearances based on Chris Adams. It was Brynner's character from the Magnificent Seven. They were almost identical outfits that they had on. So he had it going on a little bit when it came to this. I just love Yul Brynner in this though.
I also noticed for the first time I actually watched, because I said before, I watched this when I was a kid, and now it's kind of funny now that when you see these films that you watch as a kid, you watch them nowadays, and because you see them on DVD, Blu-ray, or through download platforms like Amazon, etc. They're now in widescreen, so you're actually seeing the whole screen and stuff, which is kind of like, oh, okay. It's like, so you kind of get more immense there. But I like that the little details that you're getting all the way through. So basically, it's like, you get the details of the park, and Josh Brolin's kind of saying he's been there before, so he's filling Richard Benjamin in. And then you go behind the scenes, and you find out that like the snakes are. So they're acting on their own, and little things are happening, and so you're finding all this little information out. But they're not long, wild-winded passages. It's like you're not sitting there listening to like science going on over your head for for
like for the eggs are turning in Jurassic Park, showing how they genetically do things. It's not as in depth as that got to be.
Well, Jurassic Park did something very, very clever, though, didn't they? The first Jurassic Park. I mean, after this, they kind of went more into the science of it, but the first one they did it quite clever, because remember they had that little cartoon about
I love the cartoon,
which was like, oh, this is very clever actually, and they put it in layman terms, but yet it was enjoyable and
fun. Dino DNA.
Instead of having some scientist sitting there talking to you about the whole procedure, and you're sitting there, okay, get on with it, okay, yeah, fine, okay, I got it, I don't understand,
let me off this ride.
And I thought Westworld did that very, very well, with able to take interest into this world, but interest in through like step by step, but at the same time not over immerse ourselves, and that drowned us out with science. It's like, just accept this is what it is, and we're going and go with it. And I think you do.
I often wonder if we're ever going to come to that point where you're going to have parks like this. I mean, it's not without the realm of reason the way things are going. You know?
Well, the funny about this is Westworld came out the same year as Stepford Wives.
Right.
And they both deal with a similar theme.
Robotic,
and it seemed to be that these were springboarded off the thoughts of Walt Disney with the Hall of Presidents and the, not Small World attraction, but the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, where you had like these animatronics moving around and people thought they were so lifelike.
I love the Pirates of the Caribbean.
What happens when they become too lifelike?
Yeah.
And
Pirates of the Caribbean is badass. I love that one.
But if you read like Ira Levin's Stepford Wives, the one who actually puts everything into effect is a person who worked for Disney. And he's the one that started making the wives, changing robotic, the wives over to these robotic wives. So it's quite interesting, actually, that these two came at around the same time. So obviously they thought that by this point in our lives, we'd be here.
Right.
But to be honest, I think with robotics, as far as humanoids, it seems like the only ones that are going to be making money out of it in the short term, not in the future, but in the short term future, would probably be pornography and porno. And
well, they got those robotic dolls now. They're not hell with blow up dolls. They got robot dolls now that I mean, just like creepy, weird, authentic looking porno dolls. You know, I don't know anybody that's got one. Clearly, they're probably expensive, you know.
Oh yeah, they'll probably be marked down as they're out for years on end. Give it about 5-10 years and you probably get one, you know, on sale, and you probably get a free Xbox with it. But but yeah, so
Debbie doll, get an Xbox with Debbie doll.
But if you do see some of the footage that's going on, they are working on it. I mean, they've come a long way, and it seems like every year they're getting one step closer. I guess whether we will get the thought process that is involved in it or get them as lifelike as what we see in this film or in the TV series Westworld is something to behold. So, but I'm not quite sure if we will see that in our lifetimes. But if we do, but if you take the humanoid aspects out of it, we are entering a computer age. We are in the middle of a computer age where computers are taking over people's jobs.
Well, we got stuff like having I want to say her name, she'll start going off, Alexa in about 2 rooms of our house, and I rely on it a lot. It'll even tell me when I have to, get on the computer and start talking to you. It's like, you have an appointment with Literary License Podcast. It does. It must pick up my Google Calendar now or something, but...
Well, it's also, if you look at things like self-checkouts, automotive fields, factory jobs, and I guess you kind of have to look at yourself as like, what's this actually mean for the blue collar worker, and how many jobs will be there? Because I remember like when we used to do school, you can get a job in a supermarket,
sacking groceries, cashier, yeah.
And you don't really need those kind of jobs anymore. So it's going to be hard to get entry-level jobs. And God forbid if we get to the point where wait staff are going to be automated.
Oh, it's good. I still want a human being. I think that a lot of people we're old school, I guess, now. We are the old school. I still want somebody to, bring my stuff, and I want to talk to somebody, unless it's, I can't imagine.
Well,
but 500 years from now, who knows?
Well, in London, our high streets are suffering because everyone's going online and buying stuff. And so everything's going to this kind of culture where we're going to a more antisocial. When I do go to if I go to the grocery store, if it's not Aldi, but if I go to Marks and Spencer's or not Selfridges or Sainsbury's or something like that, I go through the self-checkout because I really don't want to have conversation with the cashier. And then, but in honesty, that's quite a bad thing for me to do because I'm actually putting people out of job every time I do that. So
I know. It is kind of, that's why you have so many lines here in the checkouts, because people will go to the lines where the people are, because no one wants to screw with that thing. I fuck it up at least once every time I go through with the self-checkout. I screw something up. Never fails.
In this country, the self-checkout's the most popular.
Is that, well, it's very popular over here. I just once in a while like a human being because, they do like to talk. It's a boring job. I used to be a checkout, when I was younger, and you're just standing there constantly throwing groceries through a scanner, and it sucks. It's so boring.
I always feel like I'm being judged by what I'm buying.
No, I don't think so. Well, if you got 50 quarts of booze, and 12 cases of Bud Light, Our Spanish like to drink here. Every time I see a bunch of Spanish dudes, then I go, I'm not getting behind them because they've got carts full of Bud Light. And it's cartfuls of Bud Light. And they'll drink till 4:00 in the morning and go to work. I always ask them, how do y'all do that? I mean, I couldn't do it. But I feel sorry for people in the self-checkout stuff because I talk to them. They say they tell me, matter of fact, this week they know their jobs, their days are numbered because it's all going to automation. So why not? Well, you got automation in the theme parks now. Yeah. You got the animatronics, like Jurassic World, or Jurassic Park, and what do you call it? Not Disney, but
Six Flags.
Studio.
Universal.
And I mean, those are really cool. They're so real. When you're coming out on the ride, the one with the boat, and they got the huge T-Rex there, and it looks like it's coming down to eat your boat before you go down the waterfall, and it's just like, that shit looks real. And you're like this because it's a robot, but you're going like this anyway. What if the robot goes crazy and picks you off when you're going over the waterfall? Because it's happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess if they do animatronics, that they hope to do in the future, I imagine that most of your zoos will probably be animatronic animals and stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm not a big zoo. I mean,
or SeaWorld. SeaWorld.
I've never been a big zoo person. I like taking the kids to the Dallas Zoo and stuff, but I just don't. I just wish it just seems like a prison for them. And I think
it really depends on if they were born in captivity or not. If they were captured and thrown into the zoo, I find that quite depressing. I don't think that's right. But if they were born
remember the Watertown Zoo, the Thompson Park Zoo? Remember the bears and the lions? That used to break my heart. Yeah. Oh, God, they used to break my heart.
That was one of the Flowers family that probably went on safari and brought it back as well.
Yeah. But it was so sad in retrospect. Now that we're older, we've seen the conditions they were living in. That was bullshit. And you had that one bear dug his way out that one time.
I mean, I find what you do find now is that the London Zoo here, for instance, is more of the smaller animals. They don't have any of the big animals there. And the big animals are at the safari park where they're all running around wild and you kind of drive your car. I think Whipsnade, if you do like films and you're a watcher of films, Whipsnade was used in the movie The Omen, where he's freaking out when the monkeys are all climbing over the car. That's Whipsnade. That's Safari Park here.
Oh, and that's actually, I didn't know that.
That's actually quite a good little experience. So that's quite nice to see the bigger animals there and the smaller animals, somewhere else.
Zebras are mean. I took the kids to Fossil Room. It's a huge safari park here in Texas. And here comes the zebras, and they're all so cute looking. And those sons of guns, they'll rip that cup of food right out of your hand. They are mean. Zebras are mean. They are.
Emus are mean as well.
Yeah, no shit. They'll chase you down.
I was feeding an emu before, and I like had my paper, your Dixie cup, and I'm feeding it. And he just took the Dixie cup and swallowed the whole Dixie cup and everything down. And he goes, watch it going down his throat. It's like, okay.
Yeah, large birds are. They got ostriches. They're intimidating because I got a small car, and then you see this horde of ostriches coming. I go, oh shit! There goes the paint on my car, and they literally are pecking on the top of your car because they know you're bringing food, and they just see you, and they're intimidating when they're walking to you in a cluster of ostrich coming towards you.
They can just pick you up and eat you if they wanted to.
They're huge.
It wouldn't be apparently some of the worst deaths in the world is actually being trampeded on by ostriches.
Did not know that.
Apparently happens, yeah.
Food for thought.
But going back to Westworld, I think that I kind of wondering also about, because they don't really go into this, and I'm hoping that, but they do hit it in the TV series. It was a very good job, is that when you go to these parks and you can kill any of the humanoids or any of the androids or whatever you want to call them, and it's okay to kill them, that can you get a thirst for it?
Yeah,
because they do address this in the TV series, which they do very, very well.
Right.
But so you kind of do wonder, it's like, God, would these kind of theme parks be a great place for a serial killer to go to?
Oh God, yeah. You're probably giving somebody an idea. But normally if it's crossed your mind at least once or twice, somebody probably has thought about it, you know? It'd be the perfect place.
Well, another thing is that you can actually murder people in like Westworld, and I'm not quite sure how the other parts work. I gotta say, I don't think you murder too many people in Roman world. I think you're just having sex, from what I can gather from this film.
Yeah.
Unless you maybe you can crucify crucify one of the androids in Roman world.
That's awful. I don't know who want to do that.
You don't really get an understanding, but I mean that was the thing of the Romans in the times. I don't know if you could take part in that or not, but
Romans knew how to party though.
Yeah, and as far as medieval world, I mean, I guess you could like pat people's heads on the spike. I mean, that's what they did in those days. I don't know how realistic those two. I mean, Westworld, I think was probably the safest one to show.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was funny. You could tell that the robots were going to start doing their thing because this guy was in medieval world, or was it Roman world? And the girl was like, you know, she was shunning his advances. It was medieval world. You know, she didn't want to have sex with him. And he knew, so I was like, well, she's disparaging me. It doesn't want me. So you knew the robots just saying, fuck this shit at that point. And that's when it started going downhill. And then it seemed like it was a virus in the system that just went from one to the other, and it followed, you know, all the way around.
But I think that's what you have to do with, that's what you have to think, you have to worry about artificial intelligence, because if artificial intelligence is based on rights and wrongs and learning, and then if you look at the human concept of their psychological being, basically we're brought up and we're kind of like, our brain is like a computer, but we start, how do we know when artificial intelligence starts developing a conscience or start developing a self of themselves or worth? And, or I mean, the TV series kind of addresses this a little bit better here. Here, we don't know if it's, if he's just designed to kill. His job is just to design, to play the victim, to start a fight and be shot and die over and over again. And, do they wipe their brains between each of these, or are they, to design? And another thing is like, if you're putting in artificial intelligence, isn't artificial intelligence about them learning at the same time? So, see now, just for that little device over there, well, I will not say her name because she'll start going off. She learns stuff. She learns things about when you talk to it. So I mean, it's possible even for a small device like that little Amazon machine I have here next to me. So it's possible to learn on at least that's the lower level, but it does know what you like after a while, and it repeats stuff. And what part of the intelligence, how much of learning does it take to actually learn what emotions are and be able to experience those as well, which is kind of mind-boggling in its own right.
Well, the thing is, didn't he say in the movie that the robots built some of the other robots, so they weren't sure how they worked or what they did?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, which I didn't see that, and I didn't notice that in any of the newer ones or the new series that came out on Amazon.
No, they got more of like the emotions, and they got a sense of who they were, and that they had every right to live and lead their own lives. They were slaves. Which I guess they are. If you have an intelligence and you get to the point where you have your own self-worth, and you understand what your own self-worth are, and that you're designed to just do this job over and over and over again and be the victim to people, right? Then I guess you will revolt, because in effect you are a slave.
Yeah, and I was laughing. I don't know. Was Dick Van Patten as the banker? Was he supposed to be the comedy relief in this?
Well, I had to say that it's not a 1970s film unless you have Dick Van Patten in it.
I guess.
Or a Van Patten, any Van Patten. There used to be everything. It's like you used to watch TV and films from the 70s and 80s, and it's like it didn't feel like a real film until a Van Patten showed up. There was Joyce Van Patten, then Vincent Van Patten, and Dick Van Patten, and it's like, oh look, it's a Van Patten. So, yeah, I think he was supposed to be like the bumbling, every man. There's nothing rugged about him. He's like the nerdy kind of banker, accountant kind of guy going in and living his dream of becoming a sheriff, even though he really didn't do anything to become the sheriff. He just kind of stepped in because someone killed the sheriff.
Yeah. I don't think I want to be a sheriff with all that breaking down the machinery going on. They didn't really say what happened to him in the movie, did they? I mean, I don't recall.
Patten, I think he probably was being killed off with everyone else. I mean, he showed up you kind of saw him at the bank, but then you kind of saw the dead bodies in Westworld, didn't you, when they were riding back? You know, when he was riding through Westworld, come back, and you saw everyone being dead. So I imagine he's probably one of those bodies.
Right, because I was like looking for him when everything was at the end. And I guess the end really just consisted of the chase scene, you know, because Yul Brynner just keeps coming back like the Terminator. I mean, he even sets him on fire. He throws acid in his face, which I found out was Alka-Seltzer upon reading it to make it look like the acid was eating his face.
I do have to wonder how big this park is. If it holds these 3 parks, and how much acreage is in for each park. Because when he's running away and he's traveling,
it's miles.
It's like a state.
Well, it's sort of like in the series Westworld, you know, the one on Amazon. I mean, they have the outer rim. It's sort of like, you know, flat Earth. I mean, it's got to be sizable to house something this big.
Well, you have to be able to see it from space, I imagine. If it's this long, you know, massive land. Because even the TV series, I mean, that's got to be at least 50 miles in circumference. You know what I mean? From the middle to the end. And
that's just Westworld. That doesn't encompass any other world.
I know. So it makes you wonder. You probably would need a whole state to house this amusement park.
Oh, easy. You're just, you know, the whole Mojave Desert.
Unless medieval world's just inside a castle and you can't go outside the castle.
Well, they didn't show much of those, so you really don't know. I mean, I don't know if they wanted to expound on that with another movie or not, because they didn't really go into it.
Well, it could have been budgetary reasons as well. If you notice that, I think the only thing that does let this down is when you do get a glimpse of these 2 different worlds, is that medieval world kind of looks a bit like those 1950s medieval films, TV films you get, you know, with the Technicolor and Danny Kaye singing somewhere in the corner. It's kind of a bit like that. And Roman world, you didn't really see. That was more like through a screen. It was always the one set. It was always by that pool. And that's all you saw as far as Roman world was concerned.
Was actually somebody's estate they filmed that on, that had all that scenery and stuff.
Yeah, it's probably someone who had some Roman columns by their pool, wasn't it? that was Roman world.
That's all you saw, though.
But Westworld, I mean, to be honest, that probably is an easier thing to film, especially at this time, because Westerns were the big money makers for film studios. So they always had those Western sets, didn't they? So it's like,
they had the Mojave Desert to film in too. And if anybody's been to the Mojave, that is just, at first when you go through the Mojave Desert, it's like, oh, this is really ruggedly beautiful. 2 hours later, it's like, fuck this. When are we getting out of the desert? I'm so sick of driving. Definitely. And then it says 120 degrees on your thermometer on the car. Just like, God, I hope we don't break down. But it's just desolate. I mean, it's just total desolation. So there's lots of room. How people live out there, I don't know.
Yeah. But then you're kind of wondering, is like, so if a very big amusement park like that opened up somewhere, it took over, I don't know, most of, let's say, Dallas, not Dallas, but say most of Texas.
Or Rhode Island.
And precisely.
I love Rhode Island.
But it's not going to bring jobs to anyone, is it? Because they're all automated. So what are your final thoughts on Westworld?
I loved it. I mean, it's been so long since I revisited that movie, but I really liked it. And I liked that I noticed that. So I think that it spurred other, you know, robotic type movies to come off of that, because let's face it, Yul Brynner he would have made a great Terminator. They should have hired him. Too bad he wasn't alive. But I loved it. It was the first time they started digitizing things, and you could see that there was some actual, you know, vision with this. And I would watch it again. I think everybody who likes, you know, these 70s movies and whatnot, it's definitely a must-see.
I think also for a 70s film, I think it does quite well. I mean, there's some things dated, like computer, you know, they got these huge computers, and as you know, computers
with the tape to tape stuff, whatever the hell that stuff was.
Yeah, they didn't get bigger. The computers got smaller as time went on, but you know, they didn't know. But outside of like the few little things like that, it doesn't feel particularly dated. I think it does really well. And I have to sit there and say that when they're fixing the robotics, I think they did a very, very good job of keeping it quite realistic. And even when they take Yul Brynner's face off, I think they did a really good job there. And even the mask looked just like him. So I think they did a fantastic job. And I think that I like the film, but I think now that we're watching it, I actually love the film, but I don't know if I really love the film because I am such a huge fan of the TV series now as well.
Well, I'm a huge fan too, but it's nice to see where they got all the ideas from. Yeah. And I mean, then they got the steely whatever look in Yul Brynner's eyes, like, I don't know, like mercury colored, whatever, you know, you could tell he wasn't human. But I mean, I really enjoyed it in retrospect. I hadn't seen it in like 40 something years. We're getting old, Keith.
But, same here. And I said, say Yul Brynner's performance, I think, deserves all the kind of applause that it got, because you do think that he is an android. There is something that's not quite human about him, which is
he's so stoic and just poker faced. He doesn't,
And even the way he did his eyes, I mean, even the smallest things, everything looked like it was measured. And I have to say that it does give me thought about maybe Yul Brynner was maybe a better actor than I ever gave him credit for.
I always loved him. I loved the Magnificent Seven. I loved him, like I said, in the Ten Commandments. Then again, I had a crush on him when I was younger. I still do. I thought he was hot. Yeah. I like that bald action going on. He was good looking.
You liked him in the King and I, all shirtless all the way.
He was really good in that too, I have to admit. I thought he was a great actor. I think that he was just one of those, it was really sad how he died, and I think about it and a final thought, because he had put out that film about smoking and why he died, and he wasn't supposed to be shown until after he died. And that was the one thing that set in my mind, boy, he could have had so much more time,
Yeah, but then you also kind of wonder, his career was kind of on the wane then as well. So
true, but a lot of people made a comeback. I mean, look at all these.
Yeah, you never know what could happen to him. If he was alive today, who knows where it could have been. So yeah, it is sad. Talking about sadness, I guess that brings us to Shawshank Redemption.
Very sad.
Shawshank Redemption is a 1994 American drama film that was written and directed by Frank Darabont. Frank Darabont, you probably know him from The Mist. He also did that. He did The Green Mile, and he did the first season of Walking Dead. That's the reason we have The Walking Dead, which you'll actually, when you see a Frank Darabont film, you will see a lot of the same actors pass through the different films and film connotations. Shawshank Redemption is based on 1982 Stephen King novella called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. It tells the story of a banker, Andy DeFries, played by Tim Robbins, who is sentenced to life in the Shawshank State Penitentiary for the murders of his wife and her lover, despite his claims of innocence. Over the following 2 decades, he befriends a fellow prisoner, contraband smuggler Ellis Redding, played by Morgan Freeman, and becomes instrumental in the money laundering operation led by the prison warden, Samuel Norton, played by Bob Gunton. The film would also star William Sadler, Clancy Brown, Gil Bellows, which you probably know from Ally McBeal, and James Whitmore appears in a supporting role, which James Whitmore, fantastic. Darabont purchased the film rights to King's story in 1987, but development did not begin until 5 years later when he wrote the script over an 8 period, 2 weeks after submitting his script to Castle Rock Entertainment, which made its name by Rob Reiner, who made his name with Stand By Me, another Stephen King. Darabont secured a $25 million budget to produce The Shawshank Redemption, which started pre-production in January 1993. While the film is set in Maine, principal photography did take place from June to August, almost entirely in Mansfield, Ohio, with the Ohio State Reformatory serving as the infamous penitentiary. The project attracted many stars at the time for the role of Andy, including Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, and Kevin Costner, and Thomas Newman would provide the film's score. While The Shawshank Redemption did receive positive reviews on its release, particularly for its story and the performance by Robbins and Freeman, it was a box office disappointment, earning only $16 million during its initial theatrical run. Many films were cited for its failure at its time, including the competition for films such as Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump. To the general unpopularity of prison films, lack of female characters, and even the title, which was considered to be confusing for audiences. Even so, it went to receive multiple award nominations, including 7 Academy Award nominations, and a theatrical release that, combined with international things, increased the film's box office gross to $58.3 million. This is one of these films that didn't do very well, but God forbid, when Blockbuster was bringing out their videos, all of a sudden became a huge hit. And it ended up becoming the lover of most films. I think this film is also part of the National Film Registry now as well.
Yeah, it is.
Important films. So what we're going to do is cut to the trailer of Shawshank Redemption, and we'll be back after the trailer.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard all the evidence. I submit that this was not a hot-blooded crime of passion. Consider this. A revolver holds 6 bullets, not 8. That means that he fired the gun empty and then stopped to reload.
By the power vested in me by the state of Maine, I hereby order you to serve 2 life sentences back to back, 1 for each of your victims. So be it.
Send you here for life? That's exactly what they take.
I believe in 2 things. Discipline.
Help me down!
And the Bible. Here you'll receive both.
Andy came to Shawshank Prison in 1947. Why'd you do it?
I didn't, since you asked.
You gonna fit right in. I must admit, I didn't think much of Andy first time I laid eyes on him. He had a quiet way about him. A walk and a talk that just wasn't normal around here.
There are places in the world that aren't made out of stone. There's something inside that they can't touch.
What are you talking about?
Hope.
Let me tell you something, my friend. Hope is a dangerous thing.
Damn it, Dufresne, you're putting me behind!
Hope can drive a man insane.
You better be sick or dead in there, I kid you not!
You better get used to that idea.
Oh, my holy God.
I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Get busy living, or get busy dying.
Get busy living, or get busy dying. That's damn right.
Welcome back. So, this is Literary License Podcast, and we're discussing The Shawshank Redemption from 1994. So, Vicky, what are your thoughts of The Shawshank Redemption?
Well, I'd seen it several times. It's actually, every time it's on, I'll watch it. I really enjoyed it. The one thing about this time around when I started, reading about it, because you know how we have to look up whatever, facts and it gets interesting when you get into some of these films, how that they were in a parallel. It was like a parable of life, death, and rebirth. Sort of like when they're entering the prison, they're naked and white, and then you got Tim Robbins, who looks like he's a resurrected Jesus when he escapes throughout that nasty pipe. It's like, but It was really like a parable of Jesus Christ, and I believe that's what I read in a lot of it. And it never really went through my brain that way until I started reading about it, and it does come out like a parable of a resurrection of sorts. And I thought that was really interesting. Tim Robbins, I think if they had picked any of the other actors, it might not have been so good. And I think the one reason he just finished Jacob's Ladder, I think when they went in and when he got this role, and I think his face was still so fresh that he actually brought something more to the part than Tom Cruise would have. Tom Cruise was up for it, but didn't want to take it because he was being a little turd and didn't trust the directing capabilities of the director. So he kind of missed out on that one. It might not have been a great box office hit, but like you said, when VHS and all that stuff hit the map, it was one of those go-to, I have to rent movies. So it did make out pretty good after the fact. And I think they're still getting 5 and 6 digit residuals up until 10 years ago.
Well, it's one of those, Tim Robbins is quite bizarre because I read the story. I was at that time when it came out in a book called Different Seasons. It was one of the short story novellas by Stephen King. There's a couple other films that they did make into films based on some of these stories in this book as well. And I found that was interesting is that Tim Robbins doesn't fit the book, but
neither did Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman was actually an Irishman, a white Irishman. That's why it was kind of funny that they were making, they were asking him why he's the way he was or whatever. And he goes, it's probably because I'm Irish or something like that.
Yeah.
He's black man.
But it's one of those films that, because, I mean, the Andy Dufresne character in the short story is kind of this, he's a bank, you know, he runs a bank,
Banker,
and he's very
CPA
bankish
kind of
and
thing.
very bookish and so on and so forth. So you kind of picture kind of like this 5'7" kind of pencil thin kind of guy. And then with Tim Robbins, I mean, Tim Robbins is 6'5". He's
Is
very,
he that
very,
tall?
he's extremely tall, yeah. But saying that, it works. It's one of these weird things that when you read the book and you think, okay, and then you see the movie, it's like, this shouldn't work, but everything about this film works. Even all the casting works fantastically well. And I do, it's not a short running film by any means,
No,
but it doesn't feel
long.
like a long running film. I think it's, how long is it? I think it is 142 minutes. So it's over 2 hours long.
Yeah.
Actually, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yes.
2 hours, yeah. No, 2 hours and 14 minutes, excuse me.
It's over 2 hours, easy.
And but at the same time, you never find yourself bored with it. It moves at a really good rate. And I do like some of the casting choices that he does make in the film. I love seeing James Whitmore. He is fantastic. He's old, you know, very old Hollywood, you know, and he's, you know, the old Brooks Hatley, the elderly prison librarian.
I liked Clancy Brown as the prison guard. And the one thing I liked about him when he did do this part is they offered for him to be a prison guard in Ohio State Penitentiary area. And he decided he didn't want to do that because he didn't want to portray the prison guards as assholes. And that's where he learned to be this way. So he didn't actually go and hang out at the real prison for a while. And I thought that was kind of cool that he was thinking that way. A lot of people don't.
Like William Sadler, you know, the Haywood, you know, the one who had the stutter. Because normally when you see him in a film, he's always the bad guy. He's always the evil guy. And it was good to see him play against type because you see him and so you have this impression of him. And then you actually, by the course of the film, you actually realize he's not the bad guy at all, which I quite liked. You know, like, and I think Frank Darabont, for some reason, has a real penchant with capturing Stephen King's stories and being able to do them justice. Because let's face it, if you are a Stephen King fan and you do see some of these films, there's very rare that Stephen King adaptations transfer very well on screen. There are a
James
lot
Whitmore,
of bad.
That was so sad when he hung himself. I knew he wasn't going to make it. The first time I watched the movie, it's like, oh, he just didn't want to leave. Mm-hmm. And in actuality, though, I mean, you can see where you had a life in prison, which makes the movie so compelling sometimes. These older people have been there for life. They know nothing else other than that. And to be set free in the real world is so got to be intimidating. What am I going to do? How am I going to survive, you know?
Everyone you know is probably dead. The world moves on. It just means that everyone on the outside world, whether
has gone on with their life,
whether it's family or stuff, and let's sit there and say that, you know, you go to prison for like 40 years. Well, let's take 20 years. I mean, you know, here we are in 2020. Look at life in 2000.
Right.
And look at where we are 20 years later, just with technology alone, mobile phones, the way that we watch films, the way that we watch television now, the way that we do our jobs. It's changed.
Watching movies on a cell phone, you know, I mean, just everything. It's got to be. It's like, wow, what have I missed?
Yeah, and even the way that we do our jobs and the way that we communicate at work. I mean, if I looked at when I started the workforce, you know, it took a small village to do your job. Now you do your job on your own. You're more solitary and stuff like this now as well. And the jobs that you're probably allowed to do, you know, are probably going to be menial and worthless kind of jobs. You know, they're not going to give you something worthwhile when you get checked out of the prison, you know, and then eccentric and prison life though is rough in it. You know, I don't suggest that
Tim Robbins, he's kept getting raped. It's just like, oh my God. And the first one, if I'm corrected, was pretty brutal. I mean, you know, these guys were. Well,
it's what happens. It's dominance. I mean, the thing is, if society is about dominance, if you Lord of the Flies, basically, when you have people, you know, young boys trapped on an island, it's about dominance. The dominant person will succeed, and you need to make one person submissive and brutalize that person because it gives them more power. And if they got more power, and you're not going to say anything because you don't want the attention towards yourself. But saying that, there is a sense of community within a prison system that you can fit in and have a form of community in the prison if, for some people, that can work for them. Saying that, I don't think that people should, if they're feeling disenfranchised living at home and they think that prison is going to be the answer or become part of a bigger picture, I don't think that's going to be your thing. But some people do actually thrive in the prison, which we saw with the James Whitmore character. It became part of his life. It was his life. And to be honest, the cruelest thing, probably the biggest prison that they ever did was actually kicked him out into the real world, because then the real world was his prison.
Well, didn't he try to kill one of his comrades there because he was afraid he was going to be, he didn't want to leave, and he held a knife to one of his friend's throat because he didn't want to go. So that he was really scared. He didn't want to leave. He didn't know, because he did it so well too, because it's like, oh my God, this poor old guy, they're going to shove him out into the real world. I mean, he really does tug at your heartstrings a little bit.
But you also have to look at the money situation. Okay, the taxpayers are paying for it. You know what I mean? And once you serve your time, it's like, okay, he's no longer going to be a harm to society, so you have to let them go. You can't let him live there because just for the simple fact because he's comfortable there. Because at the end of the day, we don't really know what he did, what his crime is. It could, for all we know, he could have been murdering children for all we know. Yeah. And because you're seeing him as an old person doesn't necessarily mean that he might atone for his crimes and stuff like this, but at the same time, does the taxpayer have to pay for his lifestyle inside the prison walls when it's time for him to leave? But the show, a flip side of this, there was a documentary in the UK a couple of years ago, and it's about girls in the prison system. And basically, what happens is that some of them, we're talking. Some of them are talking about percentage. We're not talking about all of them, and so on and so forth. So, so look at this with an open mind. But there are some girls that what happens is that they fall in love in prison. They end up becoming quite close to the person, and one of them gets released for whatever reasons. And what they'll do is they'll re-offend to get back in, because they say when they're inside, they got warmth, they got food, they got shelter, they got a place to sleep. When they're out in the real world, they don't get that.
Yeah.
So it can create this kind of, and if something happens, and I'm not talking about I don't know if these girls seem to be in a regular kind of prison. Didn't seem to it wasn't Alcatraz or anything like this. So I think it also probably depends on what kind of prison you're going to as well. But if you're going to get this inside this kind of system, and and you're kind of getting and you can thrive in this kind of system, it might be better for you than going to be living outside in the real world where you might not be having all these things. There's basically things that you need to live. Food, shelter, a bed. You know what I mean? And some people don't have that outside the prison systems. So it's quite interesting, and I think that Shawshank Redemption does bring us out questions and stuff like this.
Well, even Morgan Freeman was kind of disenfranchised when he finally gets his parole. He didn't know. He was bagging groceries. He wasn't happy, and then he finally remembered the tree and the note, telling him where to meet. Do you know that people actually went to that tree? It was like a tourist thing to go to that tree. And then I guess some lightning split it. And then they started making things with it, like hammers and whatever with it. And they sold that too out of the tree.
Looking for the money in the brick wall, the stone wall. But Brooks's life, does more Ellis or Red, played by Morgan Freeman. That does mirror Brooks's. He's all of a sudden he's finding himself in that same rut that Brooks is. And I also found it was quite interesting that the prisoners actually understood that as well. The longer you're in prison, the harder it is when you get released. Yeah. So I quite like that you had that the younger prisoners, William Sadler's character, for instance, Haywood didn't understand it because he's being released. I don't understand the problem. He's being let out of this place finally. And he goes, and then, it's like, well, you don't understand because this is his life. He doesn't know any life outside of this life. So I think what Frank Darabont brings to this, and I say that you get this more than you do with Stephen King. Stephen King's more about the breaking out and how.
Well, for people listening, this was an adaptation of a Stephen King story. He didn't write the screenplay.
Yeah, and I think Frank Darabont took the book and gave it more resonance than you find in the short story. The novella is a great novella. I'm not saying anything bad about it whatsoever, though it does suffer from Stephen King's lack of being able to finish a story. Stephen King always makes really bad endings. I'm sorry. And if you want to send me hate mail, send to info@llpodcast.com and I will respond in kind. But yeah, he doesn't.
Like The Mist. The Mist was like one of the worst fucking endings possible.
I love the ending. I love the ending for The Mist. I like the downbeat ending. I don't think that.
Oh, talk about downbeat. I'm not even going to say what happened for people who haven't seen it. Possibly the most depressing ending to any film I have ever seen besides Braveheart. It's just sad. It's like, oh my God.
But the film The Mist's ending is better than the Stephen King's ending.
Yeah.
So, the Green Mile, the Frank Darabont's ending is better than the Stephen King ending.
The Green Mile is excellent.
Yeah, and you're a Walking Dead fan, so you can't imagine that's going to end well when that finally goes off the air.
Yeah,
because some stories you can't have a happy ending with. You just can't.
What are we into? Season 10 of The Walking Dead? They've killed that. Well, they're bringing Maggie back, but they've gotten rid of Andrew Lincoln, and they've gotten rid of
Well, and the thing is, if you're gonna do a zombie story, you can't have a happy ending.
They killed off 6 of the main characters in the 9th season. It's like, holy shit, what the hell happened? I mean, they didn't even know they were getting killed off.
Their contracts are up.
They didn't know, though. A lot of them, we didn't know we were dying. It's just. Yeah, I'm still hanging in there though.
But unfortunately, when you have one of these, kind of gone off course here, but kind of in the same kind of world with Frank Darabont. But if you have an apocalyptic story that you're telling, there is no happy ending to an apocalyptic story. No, whether it's the world being bombed by nuclear war, there's not a happy ending. No one's going to survive.
Like the Planet of the Apes series, there's never usually a happy ending with any of those for the most part either.
No, because as far as humankind goes, let's face it, humans kind of get everything they deserve to a certain extent. Sometimes you start rooting for the apes and going, yeah, I hope you guys do a better job than we have. Yep. But zombie stories, you can't have a happy ending because how can you have a happy ending on a zombie story?
True. What was
everyone is dead, and who isn't dead, you are food for, you're on the bottom of the rail. And if you do survive, basically you spent your whole time killing people that who have turned
or they're trying to take what's yours.
The whole thing is, you got to remember that every time someone gets bit by a zombie, it's just like, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and the numbers just keep growing and growing and growing. So, but
exponentially, yep.
And that's why for me, that's why I like the Mist ending, because, without giving anything away for people who really should see the Mist, because I think it's one of those phenomenal films that
it is. It's great.
In a lifetime. But the ending that they have on there does make sense for the world that they're in. So,
right.
So
it just sucks. It just sucks so bad.
Though I do think that Frank Darabont does give, take the knife and hit you in the knife. He takes his knife and hits you in the gut with it. Because I think that's, the final scene. You're like, oh shit! If you just waited 5 more minutes,
I know.
That'll give you anything.
5. I know. It's just it is. I'm not going to watch it again. I just can't. I can't do that to myself again. Because it's not like you watch it more than once that the ending is ever going to change. It's sort of like Braveheart. I'll watch all 3 hours of Braveheart until they get to the point where they're going to disembowel Mel Gibson, and then I just can't watch it. So the rest of it I like.
I have to sit there and say, for prison films, this is one of the best prison films that I've seen.
Absolutely.
I have seen ones in the past. I've seen Clint Eastwood in Escape from Alcatraz.
Right.
I've seen Burt Lancaster in The Birdman of Alcatraz. I have seen Sylvester Stallone in numerous films escaping from prison. But I would sit there and say that this is probably the best one. And I quite like that What I quite like about this is that it all fits into the Stephen King universe, because if you are a Stephen King fan, Shawshank Redemption does feature quite prominently in his novels. Or they're like Dolores Claiborne, it's mentioned, or it's mentioned in it's mentioned in all the other stories because they all take place in Castle Rock or Derry, most of the stories. And I quite like that you have, that Shawshank's there. And even in this King series that's out at the moment, that's out on Hulu, some of the prisoners and people, Castle Rock, some of the people work at Shawshank Redemption. It's at the Shawshank. So I quite like that this film is able to carry on there. I have to sit there and say that I can't think of any weak plot points in this film whatsoever, which I find quite amazing because it seems like
it just all falls into place.
It's one of those films that after you feel like you watched it, you feel fulfilled.
You like the ending. Well, because the ending is not a catastrophe. It's not a movie where it's like, he should have waited 5 more minutes. It's just like, it's I love the end because it just makes up for all the hardship and the horror of all these men, just the struggle just to get through their lives in this everyday existence in a prison. And, to have that kind of ending, it's like, yes,
Well, I also think it's something that you end up watching. And there's so many minute details that don't mean anything until we have the escape.
Right.
And then you realize that all those minute details about the thing is like when he's always got his hands in his pockets and he's always like shaking his trousers. Yeah. The simple fact
Rita Hayworth poster.
The Rita Hayworth poster changing to the Raquel Welch one. The hammer, what it actually means. And the way that he presents himself and what he's been doing, and that's so basically this is how he's going to escape. The only thing I don't like about here is that when we find out that Andy did not kill his wife or lover, that someone else might have done it, because I quite like the idea because I forgot that's in there.
Well, you didn't really know in the beginning, did you? Because they don't really tell you whether he's innocent or not.
And I'm not sitting there saying it ruins the movie or makes the movie worse or makes the movie better or anything like that. But I say that once you find out that he's innocent, it kind of makes it to like now you're rooting for him as a good guy. Where if he got out and you didn't know whether he murdered or not, I think it had more of a stronger resonance. But it almost feels like, oh, this is Hollywood, so only a good guy can be rewarded, and so it kind of felt a bit like that. Right. But saying that, I can't tell you in the short story because it's the short story I read back in the late 80s. I can't tell you if they made it clear whether he was guilty or not. So
right.
So, but that's the only thing. It's only because it does feel like, oh, we need to make Andy innocent, so therefore when he escapes.
Who was the young man that came into it? He was teaching him how to read because he's the one that said he was innocent and that he had overheard in another prison before he was transferred.
That was Joe Bellows. He was off. You know him from. He was Ally McBeal's boyfriend in Ally McBeal.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's where I see him.
Actually, I think he's also in Lock and Key on Netflix at the moment. Which watch Lock and Key, written by Joe Hill, Stephen King's son. Well, it's based on his graphic novel. Lock and Key is a really good series. I think you'll like it.
Have not started it yet.
If you need something to fill in the void now that you finished Sabrina, Lock and Key.
Oh my God! Yes, I need something.
It's good. Like, the first episode is very, very getting to know everyone, and then the second episode that starts taking off. But you kind of have that slow build up where they're building character and situations. But it's so far I've seen 3 episodes. I'm really liking it. But I was really excited because I was a fan of the graphic novel. So that ties it. Even though we go off course, it still ties to Stephen King. So we're still on course, people.
We're a little ADHD and we're proud of it.
Yes.
We don't have Rod here today to totally get us off into another century or another plane.
We won't have Rod for another 2 months, so we should have some really short episodes coming your way. So we do love you, Rod. And if you're voting for the Literary License Podcast for the Rondo Awards, vote for Rod Laby as well. He's up for 2 himself.
Yep.
So congratulations, Rod. So I say that Shawshank Redemption, I think that it ticks all the boxes. I think it's about human survival. I also think that it does give you that sense that if you are caught in a situation, that's probably best to keep your thoughts to yourself and keep your wits about you. You might not want to be mouthing off anytime soon. If you're
but talking about survival, though, Andy does a really good job of surviving when he starts dropping hints that he knows how to manage books and whatnot, because that really is a big part of the movie. Because he finally gets the rape group there, he gets the ringleader, his ass gets kicked, and he finally ends up gone. And then he's got the warden that he starts doing his books, but he's really smart and he's basically putting the money here and there, and he ends up going to get the money at the end of the movie and putting the warden in jail. Well, he shot himself, didn't he? Because he didn't want to go to prison, because they were going to put him in prison for embezzlement and what. I thought it was brilliant. So, I mean, everybody gets theirs, basically.
Yeah, I also think you are dealing a movie I think this is probably one of these only movies that you'll see that everything, outside of Andy's kind of acquittal where you find out that he's innocent of the crime, but everyone is working in these shades of gray. There's nothing black and white about this film whatsoever.
No. Everybody has an agenda.
Prison, they have an agenda, but another thing is that there's stuff that's good about them, and there's something that's bad. There's stuff bad about them. I mean, even the prisoners that you're voting for, they're not in there because they're innocent. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, Red was bad.
Well, didn't he murder somebody?
Yeah, when he was a young man. Do you know that was his actual son that played young him?
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I didn't know that. It was pretty cool, I thought.
They're all in there for murder. They're all a bunch of murderers. But then you have the prison service themselves, which is working in shades of gray. They have to keep the men in fear of themselves in order to make sure that you can construct everything into a peaceful society, because if you don't want the prisoners to take over the jail, same time, though I do think they go above and beyond what they need to do, don't get me wrong, I'm not condoning the violence that goes on, but but I know people that are prison guards for a living.
Same here.
My sister's ex-husband is. My nephew did it for a short time, to the point where he couldn't do it anymore.
Makes you ill. I know people back home that, I'm not going to mention names, but they've actually had heart attacks. My brother John actually retired because it's just not good for your health working in a prison system, especially in New York State, where the prisoners have more rights than the guys that watch them. But it's a very stressful job. It's extremely stressful.
I think that's prisons, not just in New York State. We got the same thing here, where basically human rights laws tend to protect them more than they protect within the service.
Right.
And I don't know what the way forward is, because I don't know if there is a happy medium there.
I don't know.
Because in some ways that, if you murdered people and you basically, or raped someone, or, or done something to a child, or whatever your crime is. I'm not talking about people who didn't pay their TV license or didn't pay their taxes.
Got caught with a joint.
Talking about people who actually went out of their way and caused harm.
Human misery. Yeah.
And you look at the knockdown effect that has on any family. You kill one person and there's a knockdown effect to the person's family, relatives, friends, community, everything about that. And it's a devastating blow for anyone.
Yes.
Anyone who's suffered a loss in their families will know this. And, so there is this fine line you have to wonder, is like, should they be treated as animals, or should they be given respect? How much rights do they have? How much rights do they shouldn't have? Because at the end of the day, they are human. Can you, if you premeditate a murder, does make you wonder, if you premeditate something, how innocent are you?
Yeah.
Now, something happens, you're in your car and you accidentally hit somebody and you drive off because you freaked out. That's not, that's something totally different. But
you're still screwed. But
if you're planning to murder someone and you basically planned it out that you're going to go do this at this time, and you go on, buy all the supplies and stuff like this, which is premeditated murder. How much rights should you have? But then again, because you're part of the human race, how much rights should you have?
Yeah.
So I think that is this balancing thing, but I'm not sure if I don't think this whole balancing part as far as prison life is ever going to be balanced out in our lifetimes, because I don't think they've been ever able to do it, because you got your do-gooders, then you got the other end of the fence, and then you got the middle, but what is the middle? What exactly is the middle? And I think Shawshank kind of shows that to a certain extent. Yeah, we do kind of.
Well, it humanizes the prisoners, though, irregardless of what they've done.
Yeah, precisely. So I had to sit there and we are rooting for these people who actually have murdered people.
Well, because the prison guards are assholes. Then you got the other element, like the rape crowd. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I mean, normal men, I guess, go into prison from what people have told me, and that's what they do. From what I understand, women are 10 times worse. I know female prison guards, and they say the women are 10 times worse.
Yeah,
than the men.
Women. It's dominance. The dominance works differently. Male dominance works different than female dominance. Both are female dominance. They might not physically rape you, but mentally they'll mentally rape you. And to be honest, they will do stuff to you that you might be able
brutalize
to feel. They'll brutalize you in a different kind of way. There's just two different ways of doing it. Male rape is a form of dominance, and it's a way of control. Well, rape, that's what rape is anyway. So in a men's prison, I mean, you prey on the weaker. But you also get male prisons, from what I've heard from people I know that work in the prison service, that it's also sex is sold. It's a commodity that's sold as well. So you don't have rape. You do have it's being used as a commerce way of favors and getting certain things and gaining certain things at the same time. So it's basically its own little village. It's basically its own little community.
It's a little ecosystem. It is. It's its own little thing going on, because you got the have-nots, you got the bullies, you got the wimps, you got, people selling stuff. You like the guys selling cigarettes or whatever. If you've watched Wentworth, you know how it works for girls.
I love
Wentworth.
I used to watch the original Wentworth.
Wasn't that Prisoner Cell Block H, though? Wasn't that Wentworth?
So there is one thing I did read about this, which I find a bit weird. It says that Andy and Red's relationship has been described as a non-sexual story between two men that few other films offer, where the friendship is not built on conducting a caper, car chases, or developing a relationship with women.
Well, there are no women in this movie.
But I just don't understand why they say a non-sexual story between two men.
I don't know why they said that. I read that as well. And it's just like, why would it be sexual? They're two guys in prison that want to get out of prison. So I don't know who wrote that or why they wrote that. Because I was going to ask you about that. That whole statement kind of confounded me. It's like, why would it be a non-sexual? Why would it have to be a sexual relationship? I mean,
it was about two men who had mutual respect and were friends. That was it. That was it. I'm friends with lots of people that I'm having non-sexual relationships with plenty of people I'm with, but I don't think of it as these are my friends and these are my non-sexual relationships. They're just friends.
Excuse me, this is my non-sexual friend.
Yeah, no. I just found that a bit weird to actually mention that.
I was confused by it too. It's like, what?
Maybe it has something to do with the alphabet people. I'm not sure, yeah, I don't know. I just found it very, very odd. I found the whole thing just like some of the stuff that I was reading about, doing some research on this, which we have touched on a lot of it. We touched on it in our own.
There's so much, though. I mean, there's so much to this movie, though. You could go on and on and on. There's something you're gonna miss.
Yeah, it just felt. I mean, I just didn't quite understand why you need
that statement kind of threw me off. I was like, what was that? Because then I started thinking, was I missing something? Was it supposed to be? I can't imagine Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman getting it on anyway. It's just like, come on, what's the deal? Maybe something in the book that we missed. I don't know. I mean, because he was a white Irishman in the book, because they actually made Morgan Freeman's part that and much more. I mean, they totally did. It was great what they did with it. I mean, it was totally put into a different, facet, but it worked.
I think that's one thing that we probably should mention to tell you, and I think this is going to give you an insight of Stephen King. I think Stephen King is a very good person, and to tell you the way that he thinks and the way that he operates. When Darabont returned to King with a $5,000 check to purchase the rights to adapt Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, which was written to explore genres other than the horror stories for which he was commonly known as. Although King did not understand how the story, largely focused on Red contemplating his fellow prisoner Andy, could be turned into a feature film, Darabont believed it was obvious. King never cashed the $5,000 check from Darabont. He later framed it and returned it to Darabont, accompanied by a note which read, "In case you ever need bail money, love, Steve."
Right. That was a great
I know, that's a really lovely story. You always find hear these things that Stephen King does that's quite lovely. Now, Darabont, and I think you can find this on YouTube, is Darabont when he was an aspiring filmmaker. Stephen King used to do this deal. It was based on the Night Shift short stories.
Right.
And he did this thing that if you sent him $1, you could make one of these films based on one of his short stories.
Yeah.
And it was called The Dollar Deal. And Darabont did a short film called The Woman in the Room, which is based on one of Stephen King's in 1983. And I have seen it. It's very, it's a student-y kind of film. But it just shows you the way Stephen King's mind works, that he actually does tend to want to encourage people to work in their media studies. If they want to use his works, that he will do everything in his power to help you. And I quite like that an author does that.
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling will never do that because she's a money-grabbing bitch. But anyway.
I found myself unfollowing her lately. I'm just her tweets and her social media is just really
oh God, when she was writing about when Dumbledore died, that she cried, that she lost somebody's and she didn't know. It's like, you're writing the bloody story. If anyone knows what's happening to these characters, it's you, dear. I don't know. She just goes off. I mean, I'm glad that she's made lots of money, and I do admire the Harry Potter books, but I think she's become an animal. Precisely. Take your millions and fuck off. So, I mean, some of the casting situations are quite interesting because young convict Tommy was supposed to be played by Brad Pitt,
right?
But because of his success in Thelma Louise, he dropped out. So, but
he looks so good in that movie. I have to say that. I mean, between that and he's in Troy, I don't know. There was just nothing wrong with him back then. Not much wrong with him now. You don't see him much anymore. I don't even know what. I don't remember.
Well, he's in One Day in Hollywood. He's the last Quentin Tarantino film that's up for Oscars on Sunday.
Which movie was that? I'm not watching the Oscars.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I did actually.
Did you? I'm kind of wishy-washy about it.
I'm a Tarantino fan. I'm a huge fan. So.
Well, I love Tarantino. I just wasn't sure whether I don't know. I think people appreciated how Sharon Tate was portrayed in this movie. I think there was a lot of license in that. There was.
Well, of course. I mean, the Charles Manson gang. Well, I can't give anything away. I'm sorry. It's just too new.
Yeah.
But I mean, I hope that when people watch that, they realize that this is the truth base. But Quentin Tarantino does that. He did that with Nazis in Inglourious Bastards. And
I love that movie.
Yeah.
That movie.
I mean, we are doing a Quentin Tarantino season in a couple years from now. So, but I mean, unfortunately, even when he's known at his worst, I still love them. So, so I'm a bit biased when it comes to Tarantino. So.
Oh, I like him. I love his movies. I was just kind of surprised the way he did certain things in this movie. That's all.
So I guess this brings us to the end of the Shawshank Redemption. So,
yes.
Vicky, what are your final thoughts of Shawshank Redemption?
I think everybody should see it. I think people that are in school learning film should see it. It sounds boring because of the title, and that's one of the reasons I didn't watch it. And then further, looking into it, that was one of the reasons also. Well, one, it was up against Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump, but who wants to go see a movie called The Shawshank Redemption? But there really was no other title to give it. But I mean, I watched it, and it's seriously such a good movie, and it is about two guys wanting to get out of prison, and what the ordeal of what it's like in prison, and the shit that goes down in prison, and it's just the human experience of just trying to be free. So yeah, it's a really good movie. I mean, I can't even explain it because there's so many intricacies to the movie and all kinds of things going on. If you just have to watch it. It's really one of the you must see films. I have to say, I love it.
But for me, I think it's one of the quintessential kind of films that you should see at some point. If you're a lover of films, I think it's a mandatory that you see it. If you just like good films, I think I have yet to meet someone who does not like this film.
Yeah, same here. I've never heard anybody say they didn't like it.
You got great performances, but I think what's also refreshing is made in 1994. But it does hark to the days of classic films. It has that classic film feel about it. Yeah, it does. Fantastic acting, fantastic characters, interesting story, great plot twists, and it just kind of all goes together.
And it all makes sense in the end.
But it doesn't do it with a lot. There's not profanity. They're not using nudity. As a
little violence, but.
Yeah, but most of it's suggested violence, really.
Yeah,
sort of thing, and
what's going on.
You're not seeing blood splattered everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that Frank Darabont, I find with all his films that I have seen, and he does have a habit of capturing like this modernizing an old classic feel to a film, and that's what I quite like about it. And Shawshank Redemption is like. Doesn't matter when it's on, you'll watch it. It's a great Sunday film, Sunday afternoon.
Actually, it's on now. I think the old man and Asher are back there watching it, not unless he's turned on Goku again when he passes out.
TNT plays it apparently on a loop all the time. So
Turner was one of the reasons they bought it, is so they could put it on constantly and in a cycle.
Yeah, and it uses up 2.5 hours worth of television time as well. So
think of the commercials. Speaking of, what'd you think of the Super Bowl commercials? I know you saw some of them.
I haven't seen any of them actually.
Oh my God!
I was kind of out on the count last weekend.
You didn't see the one with Sam Neill.
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott. Why was I thinking Sam Neill? Because of movies. Sam Elliott. I love that.
I like Sam Elliott. He's a virile man.
I know. I've got to watch
No other man can wear a mustache like him. I think the only other man that can wear a mustache like him is Tom Selleck.
Yeah. Sam doesn't get old. He just gets better. I think women were just waiting for that football ad, when that ad came out, because the Old Town Road. Asher, it was really funny though that when you watch it, I don't know if he's going to edit me out of this, but it just resonates with Blazing Saddles because you got the gay cowboy action going on. and it's just great. It was just, that was during the Oscars, but after you saw, this guy came out actually that sings the song, and it's a lot of fun. But
I actually need to YouTube, because normally what happens is we don't get the Super Bowl's not a thing over here.
No, of course not. I figured with Facebook you'd see it all flying around.
Well, I normally find I did see mention of it, but I haven't had time to actually read through it. But I know that YouTube tends to do the Super Bowl commercials, and I tend to do that a couple days after the Super Bowl because they tend to be up by then. So, but I haven't had a chance yet. But it is on my list of things to do.
It's a good commercial.
I tend to do it at work. So what's that?
Didn't work. I hope the people you work with ever listen to us, because you do a lot of shit at work. You're not.
I don't hide anything. Everyone knows what I'm up to. But at the same time, I am Employee of the Year. Yeah.
Oh my God! Really?
Yeah. So. Anyway,
oh my God!
Let's see if they give me money this time around. All I normally do is get a piece of paper that's been Xeroxed with my name on it. So
you're gonna get it put up there like a Keen Employee of the Month.
What is it? This is my 12th one in 12 years.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
And I'm always the bride, but never the gifts. Anyway, it is what it is.
It is what it is. That's for sure.
Well, that winds up the Literary License podcast, as we were discussing Westworld from 1973 and Shawshank Redemption 1994. If you would like to vote for us for our Rondo nomination, so we get the Rondo Award for Best Multimedia Site or Show, we'll put those details at the bottom of our show notes, and please feel free to send an email to them and vote for us.
Pick us.
Otherwise, you can find us on various podcasting sites, which also include Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, Cashbox Radio, TuneIn Radio, and iHeartRadio, and iTunes as well. And of course, you can follow us on our webpage at www.llpodcast.com, and make sure you sign up with our newsletter. We are having a competition, so make sure you send a picture of your pet to info@llpodcast.com, and you can win a sweatshirt, it's not just sweatshirt, it's actually a hoodie, and you can win
a nice hoodie.
podcast hoodie, whatever color that you fancy, and we will picking a winner for every month. So make sure you send in your pets. Everyone who has sent in your pets, we love them, and we'll be featuring them on our website soon, just to let you know. And we'll be picking a winner from those for March. So you should be getting a hoodie. You're coming your way in the next couple weeks once I can get my shit together. And of course, you can follow us on our social media sites, which is Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and Tumblr. And of course, you can also want to know more about our social media. You can go to our website at www.llpodcast.com, and you can read most of our sites and our feeds through there as well. So this is good night for myself. A good night, Vicki.
Good night, everybody.
And next week, we'll be discussing Paul Verhoeven's The Fourth Man with our European horror co-host, Will Miller. And Vicki
really
and
interesting story, guys. You got to watch The Fourth Man.
And it's one of my favorites.
I can see why.
Good night, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.